Lynne is a remarkable person.
She's a director who's extremely versatile.
She's a force of nature.
Tenacious, an early pioneer.
She has something to give.
She was the tallest girl.
She empowers people.
Lynne's a good listener.
She's there for the artist.
She has a great sense of humor.
She's a great thinker.
She has guts, courage.
Gorgeous, tall, funny.
She can be a blunderbuss.
She speaks French. And she was a nutcase.
When David Shire and I were at Yale in our senior year for our second musical, we wrote a show that was set in a school, and it was about a school teacher. So the opening scene, we needed some school kids. Ginny Meadow, Lynne's mother, was going to play one of the teachers, and she allowed us how she would bring us a bunch of school kids. And one of them was 12-year-old Lynne. In those days, you could make an original cast album, and when it came out, Ginny asked me to autograph it. I said wonderful things about Ginny, and then I also added at the end, and mother of the fabulously talented Lynne. Now, I thought that was kind of a cute thing to say. I don't think I really factored in what that impact that might have on a 12-year-old girl who wanted to have a career in show business.
Before I even got there, at the very beginning, Lynne had arrived and directed a play at the fledgling Manhattan Theater Club, a play by Tony Scully. And she was invited to come back and take on the job of being the director of this new theater. She was quite pleased in looking at their budget, a $75,000 number at the bottom of the page. They called attention to that number by putting some parentheses around it. It was only later, of course, that she realized that meant they didn't have $75,000 in the bank. They had a $75,000 deficit. But to her credit, it didn't stop her in the least, and she charged ahead.
My first impression of Lynne was that she was much taller and much smarter than me. I thought, I want to be her when I grow up.
She was always a very striking figure. She had, she took these long strides when she walked, and she had a great smile. Hi, I'm Lynne Meadow. I saw your play last night. I'm really interested in it. Like, whoa, okay.
And Lynne at that time was still wearing jeans and boots. And galumphing up and down a very long staircase to and from the theater offices.
There's something girlish about Lynne and fun and goofy that I love, and yet she's this really formidable woman.
She was this goddess Amazon of fury and power and intelligence and passion. And I remember I was just kind of overwhelmed by her.
She had a tan, and there was speculation among myself and some of the other black artists who were there at the time. Is she a black girl? Or, there was something about Lynne at that time that kind of threw off that kind of vibe.
She was gorgeous, she was tall, she was funny, she was exciting, and she was unavailable.
I met Lynne Meadow in the early 80s. I was an undergraduate at Yale, and she was teaching scene study. She was one of the contacts we had with the real professional world at that time. She was very encouraging of me. Lynne gives us the opportunity to work on sometimes classic plays, sometimes new plays, always with a sense of taking a new approach, seeing things from a different angle, bringing something new into the world, and always with the opportunity to make absolutely no money doing it.
The Manhattan Theater Club in those days was this fantastic rabbit warren over on East 73rd Street, and it was just a kind of paradise. It was in the Bohemian Hall, which was a Czech social club.
The shop was in an old bowling alley, and there wasn't enough money to cover the bowling alley lanes, so the scenery could be as long as you want, but it could only be 2'9" wide, because that's how wide a traditional bowling alley is.
We were producing almost immediately in 3 theaters. In fact, before I had even gotten there, Walter Kerr, then the principal critic at the Times, wrote his first major piece about MTC, and he called it a supermarket of the arts, and he congratulated her on this phenomenal rise of activity off Broadway.
It was a hotbed of activity. There were 2 theaters and a cabaret all going on each night in 3 different spaces, and the house manager had to cover all 3 of these spaces, oversee the box office and the bar.
I had a little office, and it had a fire escape out on the back. And occasionally I'd just walk up the fire escape and open the window and walk into Lynn's office and say, I just read a very good play.
It was like a reality TV show. Of course, my first office was a converted men's room, that they covered over the urinals, which I always wanted to make a joke because I wanted to uncover them and put a chair in them because they were these big, gigantic turn-of-the-centuries and go, "Hi, are you here to meet Lynne Meadow? Have a seat in the urinal."
I did the lighting, which was turn on the overhead fluorescents, end of Act 1, turn them off, beginning of Act 2, turn them on. That was the lighting cue.
On the door, the sign on the door of the tiny backstage bathroom, "Do not flush during performance."
The box office was Janine, who sat with a cigar box on a table and had little tickets that were like rides on a Ferris wheel, and she would take off each ticket and give it to each person.
There were air conditioning cues throughout each show, especially Lynn's shows, where you would have to come in and turn off the air conditioning for the big dramatic scene and then turn it back on again before the audience passed out. And it was sort of like being an anesthetist, where you wanted to keep them at a certain level but not lose them altogether.
We ran about 3 weeks. In the first 2 weeks, there weren't very many people, but by the 3rd weekend, it seemed to catch on. Suddenly, there was a crowd. We were sold out. Took Janine an extra 20 minutes to get everybody into the theater with the little tickets. And afterwards, I said to Janine, "Well, what about that?" And she said, "Yeah, I sure hope that doesn't happen again."
First and foremost, I think Lynne, tore a path in this industry in a time when, frankly, there weren't a lot of women producers to model herself on. So she figured it out for herself.
Lynne was the first female director at the National Playwrights Conference at the O'Neill, just as she was the first woman admitted to the directing program at the Yale Graduate School. So she was a pioneer from the beginning, but she was never patting herself on the back about being a pioneer.
That bravery, bravery is the virtue that makes all other virtues possible, and she has it in great quantity.
You gotta love somebody like that has those guts to do that. I really love her.
She brings a great artistic vision, as well as a practicality, as well as an incredible compassion and deep understanding of people. You mix all those together, and I think you get 40 years of a theatrical career of great distinction.
Winston Churchill said that the essential quality in leadership is never give up. Never. And I think the second never is the really important never, and I think that's Lynne.
When I was in high school, I was a long-distance runner. And maybe that's what made Lynne and I simpatico, is that she's a long-distance runner. The fact that she has run that place for as long as she has without falling into a complete torpor is kind of astonishing to me. I would have run away long ago.
It gives me great pleasure to look back on my early years with Lynne, to see how she's just evolved and become just one of the great directors and the most giving and open and easygoing of directors.
The thing that makes Lynne a good director is what also makes her a good artistic director. She has a real generosity and a great love and appreciation of artists.
Her experience as an artistic director working with other directors makes her an incredible collaborator as a director, because she knows how to receive collaboration from everyone around her.
She creates a place where everybody's ideas are valued, where she doesn't say, well, I'm the director and it has to be this way, ever, ever, ever.
Most directors sort of decide that there's a right way and a wrong way to do something, and Lynn's not like that, so you end up coming to some place you didn't expect because you had the freedom to do something really wrong.
When Lynne is in rehearsal, and I've had the pleasure of having her direct 2 of my plays, it's a very warm, party-like atmosphere almost. It's very easy for people to exchange ideas. It's very easy for people to offer their own personal examples as it pertains to the material.
She understands how important it is for actors to have the rehearsal room be a safe place and be a place where people aren't going to judge you, people aren't going to make fun of you, people aren't going to roll their eyes or make snide comments, you know, that you can feel comfortable to go out on a limb and try something and not be embarrassed.
She has dedicated her life to creating dangerous, exciting live theater. And it is an honor for me to have wit taking its place in the arc of her career.
She's a director, and this isn't true of a lot of directors, who's extremely versatile. And yet, the plays that I've seen her do all have the same measure of clarity and intelligence and beauty of design and excellence of performance. Now, that's a lot to put into one package for most directors, may I say. And so I think she pretty much has it covered when it comes to directing.
I did this play called Beggars in the House of Plenty, and it was a very, very autobiographical play. And in the final scene of the play, there was a confrontation between this boy, who was basically me, and his parents and brother, and it was very close to the bone. And I went off to a cottage and I rewrote this one 10-page section of the play for about 6 weeks, just over and over again, trying to get it right. And I came back and I said to Lynne something that I won't often admit. I said, you know, I've been writing this over and over again, and I don't know if it's right. I don't know if I'm ever going to get it right. And we were in rehearsals at this point. We're about halfway through rehearsals, and she said, maybe you're not supposed to get it right. And you know, it was one of the kindest, wisest things that anyone said to me in my working life.
It's impossible to overemphasize what a great impact Lynne's belief in my plays and belief in me has had on my life.
One of the most excited times I saw her was actually the very first preview of Fuddy Mears. The audience was crazy supportive. And Lynne at intermission said, I don't care what the critics say, I'm doing your next play. No matter what, I'm making this commitment right now, no matter how it goes, I'm doing your next play, and hopefully the play after that, and the play after that, and the play after that.
The thing that's really striking to me, I think, from my experience at MTC was the sense I got from Lynne that we're not just interested in producing this play because we think it's a good play or we think it could be a hit, you know, that we're interested in you as a writer over the course of your whole career.
One of my first plays was heading to Broadway and closed ignominiously in Philadelphia. And I felt really discouraged, and Joe Tillinger, the director, sent the play to Lynne, and she responded, and it was called It's Only a Play, and it's the first play I did there, and it came at a really crucial time where I was, because when something very traumatic about having a play close out of town, especially when the marquees are up in New York, because you're supposed to be there a week later. And when we were doing that play, Lynne said to me, I'll never forget this, she said, I want to do your next play. And I said, well, I haven't written it yet. I don't know what it's going to be about. She said, that's not what I'm saying. I want to do your next play. And I think that's the greatest gift a human being can give another, allow them to be themselves. And if we're lucky, it's our parents. If we're incredibly lucky, it's a theatrical producer.
I need for people to believe in me. And that's what Lynne Meadow gave me more than anything else. She believed in me, and she believed in me through failures and successes and everything in between. And that's a big thing for an artist. You need some people in your corner.
What's, my favorite line in all of Samuel Beckett is, Pozzo saying, I am in such need of encouragement. And for me, the Manhattan Theater Club has just meant constant encouragement.
I feel every time I walk into the place that I'm home.
For me, it feels like home. It's a place I can work and be accepted and experiment and feel safe.
If you have a problem, if you have an idea, if you have a concern, if you have a joke, Lynn's the one you go to.
There's an incredible sense of family.
She's the sister I never had.
To me, she's sort of like a sister, really. The Manhattan Theater Club was always like my older brother to some degree, or sister. I don't think I realized exactly how glamorous her job was until I was older, and being able to have a lot of good dates because I was able to invite people to opening nights.
That sort of like familial feeling that you get from Lynne is not something that you get from a lot of other artistic directors at theaters.
Lynne believes in you, and that's primary. And when I talk about Lynne as mother, that's what I feel.
For 4 decades to be the artistic director of an off-Broadway theater would be like being a stay-at-home mom for 40 years, dealing with special needs children.
So Lynne has been my theatrical stage mother, my mother, and such an important part of my career. And getting the opportunity to do sometimes much more serious work than I had been allowed to do.
She has the quality of a balabusta, which is a Yiddish word which is often misconstrued as something pejorative. But in fact, a balabusta is a great homemaker.
One of the highlights of my time at MTC and in my career, of course, was getting the call saying, "Congratulations, the Pulitzer!" It was one of the most thrilling days of my life, of course, but the very first person I called was Lynne. She knew before my mother knew, and she was, in fact, very much like my mother that day.
She's so supportive and so caring that, yeah, it's like having a mom in the business, but not like Mama Rose.
Mama Meadow.
Lynne was told many too many times as a child not to accept no for an answer. And that has certainly been a hallmark, I think, of what she's done in the theater and also what she's done at home.
If you tell her she can't do it, or if she feels maybe she can't do it, that's the thing that's going to make her do it as well and as brilliantly and with as much passion and as much gusto and success and bravado as is imaginable in a person.
My wife and I were up visiting Lynne up in the country, and I had actually for years been saying to Lynne, it's been decades and you've never taken a year off. You've got to take a sabbatical. And so I remember I had learned how to make a certain kind of liqueur, which I brought up with me. And so I was sharing that, and Lynne doesn't drink very much, so I started to drink her portion of it. And the next morning I woke up and found that I was the interim artistic director of the Manhattan Theater Club.
We called it the nudge factor. You had to have a lot of nudge factor. You could never accept no as an answer. If somebody turned you down, you called them back.
She doesn't take no for an answer, except when she does.
She's the most evolved human being I have ever met, and I have known her a very long time.
I'm grateful for many things she has done for the American theater, but I'm just very grateful that she's been my friend for so many years.
There's so much to be said for growing old in terms of just witnessing the passage of time in other people and seeing their growth, their fulfillment. I think she's been married just slightly longer than I have, but how cool is it to be married to the same guy in show business all those years and raise a wonderful child and, my God, to be artistic director of a place for 40 years, there's a kind of consistency and a true integrity to that life's journey that's pretty amazing.
To have a career doing this for 40 years, I don't think the average civilian really gets the force of will, the strength of character, the tenacity, the guts and the intelligence to do what she's done.
So we did this play, and it was unbelievable how not well it was received, and people were. I'll give you an example of what it was like. At one point, I was delivering a monologue about a character I invented who was a bus driver, but at night he turned into a cat. So I believe I leapt onto a piano. I was younger then, and I was doing my cat thing, and I, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed right across the front of the stage was a little old man walking. If I stand, can you catch this? Can you catch me if I stand up? There's a little old man walking very slowly out of the theater, like this. And I was doing my monologue and carrying on and meowing. And then finally he got right dead center to the stage. He looked up at the stage, at the whole thing, and he went. And then he turned and he went out. So this play didn't do anything to help my career. Although I do remember Lynn came in one day after we were in previews and it wasn't going well, and she said, you know what I think? You know what I think is wrong, ultimately? First of all, she said, I think the lights are too bright. And I said, yes, Lynn, that's the problem. They can see the play.
Things at Manhattan Theater Club have certainly changed. It's become a much bigger organization, though from the time that I arrived, the place was already thriving and causing a lot of excitement in the theater community, and people were lining up down the hallway trying to get into shows every night.
We gradually evolved. We moved to City Center and helping to develop the spaces at City Center.
Almost from the beginning at City Center, again, the audience was growing and we were running out of room. And we began to explore what we called producing out of house.
And then making the big move, of course, to Broadway and encouraging everybody, yeah, you can do it.
I'm not sure that Lynn ever had a fixed plan or schedule as to how many theaters and even making it to Broadway. Lynn, I don't think, ever wanted more than the opportunity to direct and make theater that she thought was interesting, of quality, and compelling.
Lynn was determined to produce A Small Family Business by Alan Ayckbourn, starring Brian Murray. It took place on a 2-story set. It was too big to fit at City Center, and so she wanted to do it cold on Broadway. And we found the money because she wanted it to happen, and her work on that led us to the Broadway Theater. And in 2003, we opened the newly renovated Biltmore space.
I remember Lynn was very nervous when they were first wanting to move to Broadway. But it's been proven to be the gloriously right thing to do.
It's still so vital. You know, there are places we can think of in the city that had their heyday, and maybe now they're sort of a bit in the shadow of their heyday. Not Manhattan Theater Club. Manhattan Theater Club is, if anything, more vital and more of a force.
Well, Lynn has created, with Barry, one of the great New York artistic institutions. I mean, it's this massive institution that they built from scratch.
It has ties across borders to artists all over the world. One may not have imagined that, back there in 1974, but, well, there it is.
There's been a consistency in quality of the work that she's done. Listen, if you look over these 40 years, I don't know who can match it.
It's really an astonishing accomplishment, the number of plays that are done all the time that came out of Manhattan Theater Club.
Lynn isn't out to pick hit plays, and yet she's had an extraordinary string of hit plays. There isn't a signature style of play, because what matters to her is an urgent voice, not a finished form, someone who's telling with that voice a story we need to hear. Often they're filled with laughter, but they're also filled with important insight and moments.
The 20 great pieces of theater I've seen in the last 15 years, probably half of them have been at Manhattan Theater Club. You know, Proof and Doubt and Shining City and Rabbit Hole. I just think they're such a heroic organization.
Manhattan Theater Club's history and its future also are kind of unparalleled.
I mean, it is a staggering achievement, an amazing accomplishment.
The partnership has been enormously special for me. I think we're both self-critical. We've looked at what we could do better. With Lynne, it's always about the next piece. It's not about resting on your laurels and celebrating what's there in the past.
I would like to thank everyone at Manhattan Theater Club who worked so hard on this show.
Certainly, we're very proud of the achievements. But it's about the next play.
One of the things I love about her is that lack of cynicism. Lynne and I together worked on the Broadway premiere of Collected Stories. We had dinner together one night, I think we were in previews, and Lynne said to me across the table very girlishly, she said, "Oh, Donald, can you believe where we are?" And I said, "What do you mean? You've been a big New York producer now for years." And she still, I mean, that's what I thought was so adorable about that, was that she still had this sense of excitement.
She's like a young kid who just still loves the theater for the sheer joy of it.
She turns to me often, just last week at an opening, and said, "Isn't it amazing that we get to do this with our lives?" And she said it with the same enthusiasm and youthful, simple pleasure that she did 40 years ago.
Happy anniversary.
You have given us such a gift.
You just keep blossoming in such a beautiful way.
Thank you for giving me a home.
Congratulations on an incredible run.
It's been an extraordinary 40 years.
I'm forever grateful.
Deep love and deep congratulations.
I love you.
I'm so proud. Congratulations, Lynne.
Bravo to you, Lynne.